Hello,
There he is.
Okay.
hello,
Hi,
hello.
Safwat.
Hi, Safwat.
Here we are again.
Okay, so are we ready to go, Joel?
Yes, we are ready to go.
All right, well, I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Public Outreach Committee for June 27th. We have 3 members present, myself, Amy Anderson, and Safwat Malik, with staff support. We'll call in session, and I first will ask if there are any comments from any public member who might be participating today.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on matters that are not listed on today's agenda, please raise your hand. Chair Riley, I see no hands raised.
Okay, we'll return it to the board, to the committee. First order of business is an action item on the adoption of minutes on April the 14th. I've looked at them, as others, and any comments?
I have no changes to suggest.
And I don't either. Can we also ask the public if there are any comments? I'd like to just make sure the public knows if they have something to say, please raise your hand anytime during. We'll try to recognize you and so on. But you got to raise your hand and let us know. But anyway, go ahead, Joel, and just ask this time.
Yes, so if you would like to make public comment on item number 1, please raise your hand. Chair Riley, I see no raised hands.
Okay, back to the committee. I'd entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
I still move.
I'll second. Call a roll, please, Joel.
Committee member Malik,
I did not attend that meeting. Do you want me to say yes anyway?
You can abstain, that's okay.
Okay, great.
so Director Malik, is that an abstain? Do you abstain?
I'm saying yes.
Oh, yes, okay. Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Riley,
Aye.
the motion passes on a vote of 3-0.
Okay, we'll proceed to the discussion items. Identify public outreach needs and effectiveness. Are the district's needs being met? I'm not going to hold us to what that question may limit us to. I just want us to kind of have a freelance discussion about where we might go with public outreach. And we can kind of fold the other issues as we just encounter the different questions and discuss different subjects. So,
Director Riley, given
yes.
that the items 2, 3, and 4 are all somewhat related, we wanted to add, just to interject a concept plan that Maureen Hamilton's been working on with consultants up at the Aqua Storage and Recovery Facility. And I think it'd be best to do that ahead of these 3 items so we can get into more weighty discussion. Stephanie, I don't know if you have anything to introduce this topic or if we should go straight to Maureen.
Well, I think we can go to Maureen on this. I met with Maureen last week, and I think she's done a really fine job of pulling together some panels for the ASR site. So I'm going to go ahead and let you talk, Maureen.
Okay,
And
yeah,
keep-
please. Yeah, that's fine.
And keep in mind, these are concepts that are kind of putting into place subject matter. The artwork will, of course, change with professional designers, but it should give us what we need to apply for some grants and other things moving forward. And it won't take very long. Go ahead, Maureen.
Great.
Thanks, Joel. Joelle, can you please pull up the presentation? And I want to start with, I took the landscape designer's slides, had to adjust some of them for accuracy reasons. And having the engineer be the artist in this case is a really bad idea. So it is truly conceptual. Please be patient.
Maureen, I don't see it in my inbox.
Oh. Okay. Do you want me to share my screen?
That'll be fine.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
presentation ready to go from slide 1.
My notes.
Yeah, sorry, it's taking me a minute just to get it from beginning. There we go. It's my bad. I'm not sharing until I've got the other 500 screens off. So in July of 2021, the board authorized an expenditure for landscape design services at the Santa Margarita ASR facility, and basis of design level work for an outreach installation. Just for a reminder, and I hope this is large enough to show up on your screen, in the upper right-hand corner where this yellow pin is where the Santa Margarita facility is located. It's on the eastern side of General Jim Moore Boulevard. There's no development on that side until you reach Palm. And on the west side is the city of Seaside. And this Eucalyptus Road right here turns into Co Road on the west side of General Jim Moore Boulevard. The city of Seaside has recently opened that up to allow hikers and walkers and bicyclists to park on Eucalyptus Road. Monterey Peninsula Engineering still has some construction gear here, and what I'm noticing is that they're still parking in front of our facility. So where they're parking in front of, if you haven't been by in the last year or two, is this new chemical building that we finished construction in 2020. The landscape design is completed. I was ready to go to the city and start talking and doing a dog and pony show saying this is what we planned. And it ends up in their recycled water allocation process. They need a little more time. So they asked us to hold off on the landscaping. For the draft outreach, that draft design is done. And I want to get the committee's input before I start working with city officials. So the goals of the outreach installation were many. We were throwing around a lot of ideas, including the former Fort Ord and native vegetation. And we kind of settled in on ASR, Seaside's role in the regional water supply, which is the Seaside groundwater basin. Kind of what does this ASR have to do with you people standing here reading this information? And the Carmel River. None of us would be doing this if we didn't have a cease and desist order on the Carmel River, so everything we're doing benefits that. There were some logistical goals, one of which is the ASR, the Santa Margarita ASR facility is an operating facility. We have district trucks, Can-Am trucks, and chemical deliveries. So we want very few words. It really needs to be pictorial to get the concept across. As well, that intersection is a fairly busy hub of walkers, bicyclists, and traffic. We need to keep it safe. We also wanted to focus on innovation. In my mind, and it's my job, I think water supply on the peninsula is incredibly innovative, and I know the city of Seaside is also really enjoying developing in innovative and unique ways. I have homage, a little joke here, I should have taken this off before committee, I apologize. Interesting to the average Joe Oliver was, well, he holds many positions, but he's the district employee who largely got ASR in the ground. So that was a nod to Joe Oliver. And I've got a little bicyclist in one of the pictures, which is also a nod to him. And we'll include QR codes so that we can navigate, so that passerbys can navigate and obtain more information if they should choose. So after a lot of back and forth, we settled on a sign that's in the shape of a water drop. Fits in with our logo. It has a backing that's hard to, we hope, hard to destroy, hard to tag, and easy to repaint if something happens. The signs would go, we were looking at possibly doing all three in front of the facility. And it's easier if I explain it this way. The chemical building has 4 sections of wrought iron between 3 columns, 3 CMU plastered columns. One column slightly off screen here, another column is off screen here. So we were thinking about a sign really smack dab in the middle of each wrought iron section. The first slide they had, I really liked a lot visually. It talks about what is ASR, how is the water getting from the river to the facility they're standing in front of, and what is ASR? So the materials that the landscape architects were able to get off the web had some, inaccuracies. They're generalized drawings. So I took a stab at creating the more accurate drawings that they wanted. They largely wanted a base map from Google Earth, which is what I've done here. We have a little sign of the Carmel River, that's Larry standing in it. And the pipeline is lined out here as it arrives at the Santa Margarita site. They also preferred that we have a map. So I created a map here with the Carmel River highlighted, the Seaside Groundwater Basin highlighted, water in approximately the pipeline location going to the groundwater basin, and then being served to the peninsula for drinking water. I also created this clip art, which should be a lot faster than it was, but I did get biologist approved steelhead trout clip art right here. Corey Hamilton had a nice clip art he was willing to loan me, excuse me, to convey what is ASR in just a picture. So we have the river with the water being piped over the hill into the ASR well and then pumped out and served to the community. And I don't know if the committee would choose to read the words we'd thought about, or if you could even read them with the sides of your screen. Does the committee have a preference? George, you're muted.
Yeah, I'd like to say I like the fact that you started with a question, because I often think we just try to blast information to the public and they may not even be curious about what it is that they're looking at, or why are they being, informed of these facts or whatever. I like starting with a question.
I'll convey that to the landscape folks who helped us. So the second slide is about really storage. This aquifer and storage and recovery, aquifer storage and recovery clip art is a bit redundant to the previous slide. So we wanted to focus on the groundwater basin with an aerial, a map, and a clip art. And where we got to was this. Staff had the idea of, in a sense, overlaying the groundwater basin to Seaside. We also had a map that we placed on top of it. So we can go either way. An artist will be a great help figuring out which way to go. We also decided maybe to talk about seawater intrusion, and I apologize, I was not able to have the time to finish these and really make them clearer. But these clip arts down below show, okay, this is what happens with natural recharge, and you pump and you over pump it and the overall groundwater lowers. I'm confident an artist can find a much clearer way to communicate that. And then the second slide is when we put water in the basin, less native water is pumped, saving our groundwater basin, and the levels come back. Again, an artist needs to work with this. Are there any questions on this slide?
Well, I have a comment on your very last bullet point, saving the groundwater basin for generations to come. That's still a question mark.
Okay.
I'm not sure if we can stand behind that statement. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I'm not thinking. I'm just reacting at this point.
Okay, no, that's good. I'm gonna write this down on my pad because my computer's used. So questions are good. Generations, find an alternate. Okey-doke.
I like the concept. I like the visual of having the actual photograph and then the way this is put together. And I agree that those the two cartoons need some work, but generally speaking, I like how you've turned it into one image.
I appreciate that. I feel very insecure because I'm the last person I would nominate to create anything artistic. And then the third slide, and this mostly came from the landscape architects. One of the staff was able to insert a picture of the lagoon beach here, kind of tying, hey, here's your ASR facility, here's the river, and here's the benefit of this ASR to the river and all these species, not to mention our clean drinking water. I think that's great because it ties in people who are walking on a street on the middle of a sand dune to the Carmel River, and maybe helps broaden people's knowledge of the natural and water environment we have here. So the next steps is to get this committee's feedback. I need to get city concurrence. I know I'm within the limits of the sign regulation, but I want to work with them because it is kind of a weird place from a traffic standpoint. We'll have a basis of design with which we can go either fund or go out for grant funds to get a proper design done by a graphic artist with the appropriate resolution, print, color palette, all those things that artists know about, and then go into construction. And I would be happy to write down all comments.
Software has a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, please. Who had a comment? Go ahead, please.
Software, don't you have your hand raised?
No, I didn't.
Oh, it actually is raised, so.
Sorry about that.
I have a comment. I'll go. My only concern about, what's the size of these signs? How many feet? Because it's a lot of visual information for one post, and I'm thinking if it's really the shape of a water drop, then you're really cutting the area to use. And
They've got this water drop approximately 3 feet wide. So I think that's probably about the same size as a standard information board. They're about 6 feet high. I think the sign, that would put this maybe starting about 2 feet. Plants can grow out there, so we could do 2 to say 4 or 5 feet, but I'm not sure how useful this is up here. So I think it would probably be on the order of 2 feet tall by 3 feet wide, maybe a little less than 3 feet wide.
that's the size of the board, or that's going to be the size that you have available for imagery?
No, that's the size of the board. The size for the imagery, it would have to have this effectively 3 feet wide and probably slightly less than 2 feet tall because it's an odd angle at the top.
Well, that concerns me for the amount of information you have to fit into the drop.
Right. And the way the drop is shown in the diagram is the panel is just about a third of the inner space of the drop, kind of the middle third on a slight diagonal. So not as big as the drop, or not all of the drop space is available for imagery.
And the drop will be about 6 feet high, which is consistent with City of Seaside signage limits.
I'm a little confused. Is this a single panel with multiple images?
3 separate panels.
Okay, no,
So-
that's what I wanted to know. Okay.
Yeah, and they'll be centered in front of the 3 different fenced areas so that there will be some symmetry.
So it's kind of sequential. I mean, from the left to the center to the right would be 3 pictures of what's happening there or what that represents.
Yeah, but then you can only walk one direction on the sidewalk.
With arrows.
What Maureen is going to do is attempt to find grant funding for this. At some point, I think we need to have a discussion about whether we want to budget and expend our own monies for this. If grant opportunities either look too bleak or take too long. Consistent with the landscaping would be kind of capping it off with the interpretive signs. I do want to show you, I'm going to screen share really quick. This is an interpretive sign that the district funded for the Songbird Sanctuary, which is off of Schulte Bridge, which was a restoration project that we undertook and then on land that eventually became owned by the Big Sur Land Trust. So you see this one, restoring our river. It has a map, Carmel Valley Road, the Schulte Bridge. A lot of language, so not just graphical, but at that point where you see it, and it's about, I'd say it's just under a sheet of plywood, so it's big. It's more like 3 by 6 than maybe 4 by 8, but it has history. It has some of that imagery I showed you about our environmental program, where they used to just throw stuff down the banks of the river and so forth. What the river looked like during overdraft and how it's been restored with lush vegetation. But there are places in time where you can spend the time and actually sit and read the text. But as Maureen pointed out, we really don't want people loitering around an active treatment facility, production and treatment facility. So that's why fewer words are more important at the proposal. But I just want to share this. We did pay for this sign, even though it was joint with the Carmel River Watershed Conservancy. You see their little logo down next to ours. And then Rana Creek was the nursery that provided some of the plant work.
What's missing from the original Maureen's presentation is the Pure Water Monterey piece. And I'm not sure if we don't tell the full story, are we really getting the maximum out of the effort?
Right. There is one spot on one panel where it is mentioned that Pure Water Monterey water is there, but you're right. It doesn't tell the Pure Water Monterey story.
Some of my longer term thought, my real long-term thought had been when the Ford Tag Trail gets built, it's going to be wandering through the Pure Water Monterey well field. And that seems like a great area to get a lot of educational signage put in. It's going to be a while. Now that they've opened up eucalyptus, once we get expansion built, part of eucalyptus is going to have a great view of those facilities. And since it seems like they're not going to open it up to road traffic, that might be another really good place to put educational signage where we can tie it directly into, hey, this is what you're looking at. And I don't know how they'd feel about putting educational signage at the bus stop, but you get very few walkers and bicyclists who are going to stop there. The walkers are probably the only people. Eucalyptus is a really good walking destination right now.
Is there parking on eucalyptus, or are people likely to stop there? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they just opened, Eucalyptus used to be all blocked off,
Mhm.
but there were people gates. So a lot of people rode their bicycles, walked their dogs, family, because it's a paved road. It's really nice. They have recently opened that up to parking during the day. And at first we thought, oh, all of the cars will go and park on Eucalyptus, but it's taking a little bit of time to transition that habit. They still park in front of the facility and in front of the K-rails there on Eucalyptus. So I think Eucalyptus is going to get significantly busier, especially once Cal-Am's construction stuff gets cleared out of the way.
So that's possibly where the source of the people that will look at these signs will come from. But you wouldn't want to put it on that side of the fence, because then you have to walk between the parked cars and the fence, and that's no good.
They may wind up on the sidewalks there in Eucalyptus. If they're allowing parking, you know, that could go one of two ways. A, you don't let your kid walk down the middle of the street because people are coming to them parking. Or B, you know, it's like Carmel, where you walk down the middle of the street and expect everybody to, you know, avoid you and not smush you.
Well, it seems to me too that if we're looking at using that roadway as another place to put some information material, we could ask the water master, would you like to put an informational brochure or whatever it is panel? Because we're looking at putting them here. I mean, wherever Seaside tells you which is allowed, when we can ask the Fortag to do the same thing for their trail, if that's kind of an access point, it's a major thing. I'm just thinking that if we're serious about information, there are probably other agencies that might do it too, and it might become more of a coordinated effort and available, and grant funding might become a little more available. Just a thought.
If we're worried about crowds and traffic, that seems to me to maybe not be the best place to do that. That it would be a better to do it at the Frog Pond, you know, that trail that I know it's going to be a while, but if the concern is that you don't want, I don't know, I like it focusing on ASR because that is an ASR facility. I think it would be less confusing to have it about that facility.
So maybe in the short run, well, here's an interesting, sorry, we've got, it's flying time. We can, in the short run, get an ASR panel ready for construction. Think about that and get the storage, and the river, I think, would probably be up to us, component designed so that it looks good and was cohesive. And then that could be almost a presentation we can go out with to others and say, gosh, as Eucalyptus is opening up, once the Fortag trail's in, there's just massive opportunity for public education, and you're standing over the heart of our water supply.
Yeah, and I think that because the facility is clearly marked as an aquifer storage and recovery facility, we don't want the message to stray too far from that at that location.
I'm going to repeat, I'm quite concerned about the shape that is proposed as the drop. And I would really like to see that within the big drop, because I'm worried that it's not going to work. There's too much stuff to squeeze into that uphill part of a drop.
So we should really have a full-scale markup.
Or even a scale down, but to some kind of a scale, because everything is that we've looked at has been rectangular.
Mm-hmm.
Easy to put stuff in a rectangle. So you might put it in a rectangle and
It
have
should be. It didn't feel that way.
You know, we could easily mock something up. Maureen, do we have access to designers on this yet, or is that the next phase?
That would be the next phase, and probably depending on where this landscape designer on her skills, I wonder if we could get them to put it in that shape. And
Well, that's what so we could take a PDF and print it out on the giant plotters that we have in real size. And by the time we get to that level of design work, we probably will be even more open here in the office. We could have a committee meeting in person. So I think we can do that.
Can you turn the rectangle this way? So that the drop is more of the vertical within the dimensions of the rectangle?
Yeah, and really what it's going to be is this way.
Okay,
And so everything needs to move a little bit
Oh.
relative to what you're seeing in these concept drawings.
well, I like the way you're thinking, Maureen and staff. I do think we need to be a little creative and a little assertive about what we're doing. I don't know what the cost issue is of like a single panel as opposed to 3 at this point. I mean, maybe 3 down the road, but maybe not right away. But I would like to see us somehow get the message out. I think it's a low traffic area in general. People are normally driving. The few that walk or bike are just zipping by. So it's mainly the walkers that you might get, and they're going to be very few of them, I think so far, but maybe over time, next 10 years, there might just be a developing traffic in that area. So I'm not too interested in making a major investment in this. I think we ought to do something for our new project and the success of it, and toot our horn a little bit. And this is only one way to do it. And there are other ways to do it too. And I want us to get to that kind of discussion as well.
so if the city, this is something I've been kicking around, the pedestrian bicyclist car nexus there makes me nervous. What if it was on the corner of Eucalyptus and General Jim Moore? You can see the facility. In fact, people still park in front of it, but you have more time and you're not next to our industrial facility. If the city were amenable to that, is that something the committee would like me to propose to them?
I like that idea, Maureen, and I like a big arrow. What's that? And then you can kind of describe the whole thing, and it's new, and it's addressing our water supply problem, and the district tooting our horn. Yeah, tooting your horn, I'm going to say.
Everybody.
Well, is that enough of a kind of general reaction to work with?
Yeah, we just wanted to make sure you had a chance to see where it was going and provide general direction. So I think that's good.
Okay, great. So I like the way you initiated the thinking on this, Maureen. I appreciate it.
Information is good. It's being covered. It's good.
Yeah. Just identify public outreach issues in general, needs, goals. What are we looking for? I have some thoughts, but I don't want to take the lead on it. I will go second or third. So I don't know if Amy, you have any particular thoughts, or Safwat at this point?
Yeah, I did want to point out in the
Or
exhibit,
Dave, yeah, I wanted to give you the chance to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out in the exhibit, we presented this exhibit before, just as bullet points. Now the bold are things that we think we could expect and presume that an outside entity can do for us. The reason a number of things are not in bold, like the annual report, it requires staff time, but also over on the upper right-hand corner, developing mailing lists and email lists and MailChimp and so forth. While an outside consultant could do that, we need to have control of that, and we need to populate it as our staff receives new emails and so forth. So the idea is that there are certain things that if we hire a staff person, they will have greater responsibilities than would a outside third-party consultant.
Well, I'd like to comment. I like your list. It's almost exhaustive. But as usual, these things always kind of meander into other directions somehow. I'm kind of looking at what looks like staff work, granted in the field of PR and outreach, and what may be creative that maybe is valuable in getting some outside input on. I don't know if I can draw a clean line between within my thinking on this, but that's kind of how I'm looking at it. I feel like the outreach we're talking about is a goal. It's aspirational, but it's not a problem. I don't think we have a problem. I just think we have a gap in what in how we're approaching the public. And I can see two levels of interest here. I can see a staff person taking the lead in most of the activities that you've identified here, just keeping track of or creating lists or just developing the ability to reach the larger public. And then it's a question of how do you reach the larger public? And I don't want to make a really hard line between those two, but I think there are two different kind of target work projects or challenges. And I'm willing to talk about a little of those too, but I just want to start the conversation about what might be a staff function and what might be a creative input to what the staff's trying to accomplish. And I don't know, I'm kind of opening it up to Amy and Anderson and other thoughts that staff may have.
Safwat has an idea.
Yeah, go.
I do apologize. I have a very serious phone conversation that I'm involved in, but I have suggested that we actually retain a PR firm to take care of our needs because we're getting kind of run over by the ferocity of the other side, and sort of making false statements and acting in a very unprofessional manner. So, so I have suggested a name of a PR company. I have not talked to them. I have not verified what they do, but from what they have done, based on their website, that they have a credible record in California. And I am asking that the district would search at a company that would, the firm name is 3-KP-PR. And I sent a link to George Riley. And their website is www.ka-pow.com. So is there any chance, is there an appetite either with this outreach company or, committee, or with the district office to do anything about that? Or are we kind of gonna continue on doing what we're not doing?
It's a great point. And Director Malik brought this up before, that we need a real high-end PR firm. And what you'll see under item 4 is the dilemma we've been hooked in, which is we've tried to keep our outside third party as a local firm. And we'll talk more about it. But we've struggled because we're running out of local firms, and a lot of the capabilities aren't there, or they're specific to other practices. So we'll talk about that in item 4. One of the things that we can do with a non-local firm would be if we identify a specific campaign or a specific element of marketing, then we can certainly, then they don't have to have ties. They're not going to attend a committee meeting. They're not going to need to know certain locally based ideas and concepts and so forth. But I think we'd have to define that campaign pretty accurately and then put them to work. Even there is one government affairs person who moved here locally, and they're doing a campaign now for, ostensibly for, it's called SAGE, and it's something about the water energy nexus, but it's really about fracking and oil exploration in the San Ardo area. But they built a website, they built testimonials, they're doing direct mail, and it looks, it looks very attractive. So there are firms like that that are out there, but they're really, singular. You have to tell them what it is that they're working on. And I'd be amenable to looking at some of those, because the talent of what's left for us here is not deep.
I agree with you. The local PRs are not our cup of tea, and they don't. If anything, they tend to be leaning towards the other side. So we don't have any PR firms that we can rely on locally, and we have to go out of this area. And I think this firm has offices maybe in Sacramento or somewhere else. It's just a matter of having the intention of finding someone that can speak on our behalf, and so we're able to get some traction and have the citizens of the peninsula understand our plight and our work that we do so diligently to not only preserve water but also to create water.
I think it's, sorry, go ahead, Safwat.
No, I just wanted to, I'm repeating myself.
I'm a little reluctant to zero in on any particular provider at this point. I think we're still sorting out where we want to go and how we want to do that. Dave, I'm glad to hear you're open to the idea, but I also think we need to have a little more substance about what it is we want to accomplish. I don't see that we have a problem yet necessarily. I don't see it as a problem. I see it as an opportunity to tell our story better than we have, or more assertively than we have, or telling more of our story than we've told in the past. All of those options, I think, are available to us. And as an agency, I think we're growing. Obviously with Pure Water Monterey and the expansion coming, and the size of our budget and the size of our staff, and therefore I think commensurate with all of that is an obligation to be transparent with the public, but also to tell the story. And I would like us to be a little more assertive about how we tell the story, or how often we tell pieces of our story, because you can't just tell a story and that's the story. I mean, I think there are opportunities to, I don't know, when maybe the PUC or the State Water Board or something, when they make some kind of decision that affects us, we can put a little more of a personal or a community flavor to that, as we try to follow what the state is directing us to do. But we can put our own spin on it, I think, other than say the state said this, state said that, because we have our own rules to implement. I would just like to have a process, Dave, and I'm trying to engage the staff here too, a process where we think about telling our story, not just doing the work we have to do. And I know everybody's focused and there's the skilled and there's, degrees and there's history and there's all sorts of things. But I just think we need what I'm hoping for we can develop is a little more sensitivity and maybe looking for opportunities to tell our story in a little different way. And if that means we have a staff person that's doing, 60, 80% of the work, but they also might direct how we get more creative in certain stories we want to tell. Yeah, Amy.
Yeah, I have a very different view of this than you do, George. Having worked in the music industry like I have, where you need marketing and so forth. Marketing is a skill. It's not just something that anybody can do well. And it really takes somebody that knows the effect of certain kinds of messages, the places to put them. I agree with you that I don't think that we've done a good enough job. First of all, just presenting what we do. I am always absolutely gobsmacked at the things that this district does. Unbelievable. And I don't think people know that. I think that, it makes us seem to me extremely capable of a lot of things. And we are. And I don't think people know that. When I talked to somebody recently, she just moved here maybe 3 years ago, and smart lady. And, the only thing she could ask me or talk to me about with water is, well, what about desal? Where is that? People are not, I think you have to tell layered stories, and I think they have to be simple enough because it is so complex to walk people through where we've been. And, I wouldn't know where to do that, but I think a good PR person would. What kinds of opportunities there are. I was interested in, I think it was the consulting business that Safwat sent us a link to, and I looked on there, and they had contracts with the city of Marina. They had contracts with a water management district in the state. And I think, why wouldn't somebody high up in our chain call them and ask them, what do they think? How's that business doing for them? It's not the same as trying to get a reference for somebody who's applying for a job, which is very scary for everybody to give these days. But they have some experience locally. They have some experience with a water district, and start asking about a few of these non-local people. Look at some of their work and talk to some of their customers, because I guess what I'm saying is you can't expect a person that doesn't have really good training in outreach, in advertising and all that. You can't expect them to know how to do it. There's tricks to doing it right, and there's lots of ways to do it wrong. So I'm a believer in a professional for something as important as this.
Yes, and a PR person is trained to do this kind of work just the same as Suresh doing the financing, or as John doing his excellent work on water and all of the reports that he produces. A PR specialist is just that. It's just like an architect or like an engineer, or these are professions. They are not people that we just gather from this office or that office and say, can you figure out some article to put in to do that? No, no. It requires a specialty.
It would outline a whole strategy.
In the long run, I think we will all be extremely happy when you see how a professional can handle our plight rather than it just shooting from the hip. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, I'd like to challenge both Amy and Safwat, both of you, to think of what is the problem or the goal of what you're looking at, because you can't just say go out and hire somebody, whether it's marketing or PR, or whatever. There are multiple talents levels and multiple priorities they give to things. And there's a political campaign, it's one thing. There's legislation is another thing. And all these PR firms are involved in those.
Yes.
And I don't think that's our issue, but that's my concern about just looking for a PR firm. I think we should define what it is we want a little more precisely than we have so far, and just to say we need more of X. And is X what? Messaging, PR, outreach, but that's still too general for me, at least for me.
Would it be something, starting with the board strategic goals and objectives or the annual report, to give a PR person, here are these documents that represent the district. How can you go from these documents to when people hear MPWMD, they know these things that surprised me when I hired on 6 years ago, and it sounds like has surprised others on everything, so that MPWMD isn't these documents, but it's a visual of, oh, they do this and they do that.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, that has taught me more about this organization than just, current events. Is seeing the history is very impressive. Sure, there's been ups and downs, but the history and what our responsibilities are. And of course, there would be a key person on the staff that could feed information about what's going on now, whatever. There's got to be some key person that can handle that. But it's, if you're asking for, in my view, what we want to do is we want people to have an honest viewpoint of what we do and what our, maybe some of that goals, like Maureen's talking about, what we do for this community, and not what CalAm or the Business Coalition or anybody else tells them that we do.
Well, but Safwat, I'm going to go back to you and Amy. I mean, on this. This is a good debate, I think. But my concern is that we're in a contentious environment in general. We're trying to take over a company that doesn't want to be taken over. We have permitting organizations that have other actions related to what we're trying to do, and then they, create dilemmas for us. So how do you can't just change the message and say we're really good guys here and you shouldn't pay attention to the nasty stuff or the the negative stuff. You can't just do that.
No,
That's not what you're doing.
But
no, you don't. And that is precisely what a function of a PR firm would do. Is we don't want to go on the attack. We don't want to go Republican versus Democrats and all that stuff that is going on, crazy stuff. We want to be very objective in our enhancing our position and educating the people of what we are doing and why that is good for the community. And I believe firmly that we lack this talent with this wonderful organization. We're doing sort of like we're putting our heads down to the paper and we're doing the whatever, but professionally is required to have us be like a Swiss watch. But we don't have the capability to spread the word and to show people why are we spending the money and why are we why do we want to buy this company? And when we go in front of the PUC, or we go in front of any organization, we want to be sure that our message is nicely packaged and polished and ready to go clearly. So, and I still say we don't have the qualifications to do that in-house.
I agree with you.
Well, I still want to come back to the basic question about, and I think Maureen made a good suggestion about going back to the goals and objectives that we're looking at. There's short-term and long-term. And I still think we need to have a little, I don't know, a little more precision, I think, in what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, Safwat, I can agree, getting our message out is one thing, but just because there's, the pine cone or the whatever, some email blurb or something, blast, there's always going to be some nasty stuff because we're in the public business. And we can't undo and we can't overcome all of that, but we can do our share of being transparent about what we can do, what we are doing, and what we can do, or what we at least can afford, inform more often or more completely, somehow, what we're doing that I think is respectable in the community. It's stuff to be proud of, and it's worth kind of reaching a little bit to make that happen.
Precisely.
Exactly.
The inform part is what we must have. Inform in detail and in a professional manner. And we don't have anybody that can do that in-house. Everybody's busy. So,
That's not their job.
George, I am accepting your challenge. I get together with Amy and we can sit down and pinpoint certain areas that we require input in, and we find some candidates that can do this work, and we can get back to you.
Well, I like the first part of what you said, Safwat. I don't think we should be trying to contact potential contractors yet. This way too early.
Yeah, and just so you know, doing it in-house, we're completely incapable of it right now. That's why we would have to hire a person. Not unlike CalAm having their external affairs person. Monterey One Water has an external affairs person. That person would still need to work with other third-party professionals to get product done, to get design done, and so forth. I did look at the firm that Director Malik pointed out, and they have done work for the Mojave Water Agency, LA Department of Water and Power, Citrus Heights Water District, and the city of Marina. So there are some folks we might be able to, for any of these, we look at their client list and, we can do some reference checking. But this firm, because they're in Sacramento, are also an advocacy firm, which is, a euphemism for lobbying.
Mm-hmm.
They appear to have more lobbying staff than they do have marketing staff. So it could be that their role for a lot of these agencies that I mentioned was more lobbying than marketing. But nevertheless, if we're willing to look outside the area, there are other, slicker, deeper firms. TMD really let us down, in short order after hiring the two principals. Well, second one didn't leave immediately, but Sam Spadoni, who was our direct principal, left, and followed by Nick, what's his last name, Stephanie?
Nick.
Yeah, Nick P.
Nick, yeah, I
That'll
remember
do
Nick.
it.
Yeah, Nick P.
Yeah.
And he's gone. He actually, I believe, took a position with the county to do some of this internal to their organization. But yeah, they completely let us down, never really learned what we wanted, never thought like the district. Despite his failings and his tendency towards procrastination, Steve Thomas did a very good job of kind of infiltrating the district and becoming he would attend board meetings and certain committee meetings, developed a lot of material and posting on Facebook, social media, and so forth, because he made the effort to think like the district. And we had a pretty good presence at the time. We didn't have large thematic campaigns to, quote unquote, capture the heart and minds of the people on a specific area, except during drought, with our Save Water, Go Blue campaign. But just, an overall campaign that positions the district in the public's mind, as well as some of our stated enemies' minds, kind of a shifting or a thawing of how they think about the district, could help quite a bit.
Mhm.
The Measure J stuff, it's interesting because we're not fighting a public relations campaign, except to the extent that people say, you guys are crazy, you can't afford it, and so forth. So affordability, sensibility around it, those are things that can be done. But we have to get a body. We can't, or a firm. We just can't keep going at the, on the track that we're on.
Well,
Thank you.
Amy?
I have another comment about something that you would do right at the beginning. If you let's say identify 2 firms, you can put in a kind of a a statement about what it is you're after. Here's kind of what's happening, and has been going on for a while with the district and the public, and the rules back and forth, and the accusations and all that business. And you tell them, give us an outline, give us an idea of how you would do this, of what you would need, where would you go with it? Would you do it piecemeal? I like what Maureen's. Did you know that the river used to look like this? The pictures of how the river used to look, and guess who fixed it?
Yeah.
There's really stuff out there. People don't have a clue about that. So I don't know. I know I'm harping, but I believe that is the only way to do this. And we need to do it. And we can't spend a lot of time arguing about it, in my view. I think we need to talk to some people, get references for them, and ask them, tell us what your plan is. Tell us the beginning of an outline of a plan. And
If
then
I
we
could,
analyze it. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead, Maureen.
And so this may be a little controversial. My husband retired with 35 years with Chevron. I used to work for the company. Years ago, Chevron built its reputation on our product is better. You are getting a fundamentally better product with Techron when you buy our gas. That's why we were a little more expensive than Shell, which would be kitty corner to us. The other thing is, for a while, and unfortunately they've dropped it, they were a big proponent of green energy. They wanted to be world energy leaders, not just, earth killers, but moving on to whatever's next. And, of course, they have advertisers. But their articles, their sponsorships, everything they did was about turning into the golden child, the good child that you felt really, really good about them, whether it's the product or the long-term vision. Again, things change, but Dave O'Reilly and Ken Durr were the CEOs that really wanted to be known as wanted the organization to be proud, to do top-notch work and be proud.
This is interesting, Maureen, because it just drives home in my mind, I think, a difference. Chevron was trying to cultivate a large audience on a single theme. I mean, a broad theme, but tight for them, right on target for them. I'm not sure if that's our challenge. I think and I'm gonna ask Dave to respond to this idea, but well, a couple ideas. One is if you could proceed with kind of designing the qualifications or characteristics of a staff person that you might want to move forward with. I'm trying to figure out how we move forward and how can we do this incrementally, because I don't think this is the discussion to settle it all. I think there's still more discussion to be held. But I also want to just pick up on Amy's idea about a couple of, I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I want you to identify potential target contractors yet. I think I would like to have us discuss what is it that we want done? Because is it talking to Sacramento or is it talking to our local people?
How about LAFCO? You forgot LAFCO?
Well, but Safwa, you can't target a PR campaign toward one agency. There's a whole series of issues that can be discussed.
And you know what? The core point is Measure J, in my opinion. And besides whatever ideas or concept that the community had about what the water district does or does not do. And we have been looked at as the bad guys for a number of years. I think the image is improving thanks to Dave and his staff that are doing a marvelous job. But Measure J is creating, and you personally have had the major part, you and Melody, to do the impossible to get the voters to come out and vote in the huge percentage we have received. The thing is that issue is still a sore, what do you call it? A poke serious in the side of Cal-Am and their supporters, and they will never forget it. They will never rest until we are defeated. And why are we kind of laying on the ground, say, yes, sir, give it to me, I can handle it. And yes, Melody sends a great letters, and other people outside of the district, I mean the Monterey district, is doing their fair share, but we are still considered a minority, and we need to have a huge educating push so that people know that we mean well and we want water for them. And we can't just sit back and say, well, we don't know, we don't want to interview anybody. Why won't we interview? What harm what harm interviewing a couple of firms to get us, I'm an architect. People interview me, people interview other people before they make up their mind. It's not about looking at my website or looking at whatever, but yes, they go out and ask about me and want to know if they like my work or not and all that. We need to do the same thing. So we can go out and interview, the district can go out and interview 2 or 3 candidates that we feel that they may be able to help us. Yes, Amy and I will sit down and write a script of what we want and what we're looking for, if Amy accepts a challenge. And then we'll take it from there. But I personally, as a resident of the peninsula, I don't want this to drag on. We either take a serious look at it and make a decision as a board and vote yes or no, or we just forget about the whole thing. That's what I'm saying. I don't want it to take 2 more years.
But they aren't necessarily the choices before us, like forgetting the whole thing. We're trying to wrestle with how we go forward. I'm concerned that, we're constantly asking Dave to do this and do that or whatever. And he's already said he needs a little staff support, and not just in the PR world, but in the analysis world or the analytical world. So I just think we ought to be a little more careful about how we want to approach this. I don't want Dave to waste time,
No,
but I also think we can't shoot from the hip on this. We've got to be a little more deliberate about what is the messaging and so on. There's a big, and Safwa, you probably know this too, and maybe Amy too, at least for me anyway, there's a huge difference between messaging and PR. And that doesn't mean that there's a precise definition that separates them. But messaging is what are you going to say, and PR is how do you get the word out. And so I think those are distinct differences that ought to be thought a little more carefully about on which way we want to go. And I'm perfectly willing to try to approve kind of going ahead with a staff person that can get some of the work done that we know about that's a little easier to define, because there's this long list. Dave, you did a lot with your staff and everything, putting it all together. But I still think there are aspects of this that, at least for me, becomes a messaging question, not a messaging theme, but what is it that we're trying to message to the public? And my guess is, in general, the theme is we are a competent organization doing good work.
right.
And regardless of all the negatives and the lawsuits and whatever else and what other people do and Business Coalition or others, I don't think they're enemies. I just think that we have a story to tell and we should be telling it. And that's where I want us to focus.
Okay.
George, I think you're too much of a nice guy. I think some of them are kind of enemies in a way. They want us to fail. And I just want to give you a picture, just a simple picture, horizontal. It's all smoggy and smoky and gray. Can't quite see through it at the bottom. And up above is this clean story that this firm will put out about us. It rises up above that, and it's about us and what we do. And it's telling people, you forget this smoggy arguing stuff at the bottom, that's what the job would be. And it is both messaging and PR. It's the kind of messaging of all the things about our organization.
Yes,
You like that, Safwa?
yes, I love it. Okay.
Well, Dave, do you see a path forward here, even in baby steps?
Yeah, obviously we need to do a little more research. I think we may also need to define a thematic campaign that we're working on, because so many of the public outreach things, the tasks are all over the board. I mean, a whole variety of things. And what I'm really hearing is we need to position the district primarily for Measure J as an acquisition, with pulling the community support along with us. And how you do that is going to be kind of a campaign. We don't need campaign for approval. The vote's already been cast. What we need is a campaign for support, and in effect demanding that this thing happen, and it happens sooner than later. And to the same end, a lack of support for Cal-Am's strategy of dragging it out as long as possible and making it as expensive as possible. There should be repercussions for that kind of behavior. And right now, Cal-Am experiences no repercussion. They can just, and we're fighting Cal-Am, as you can imagine now, on multiple different fronts. I actually made a list because at some point I've got to sit down with my counterpart, Paul Sciutto, and figure out what we can do, because it's death by 1,000 cuts. And if there were greater repercussions to Cal-Am for doing all of this, then we would have a better chance. Here's my list. It's, source waters on pure water expansion, the water purchase agreement, the waste discharge requirements for injecting at pure water, the ASR well number 1. they had originally requested extra water from the base project, and now they're coming up with alternative ways to not rely so much on Pure Water Monterey. The supply and demand numbers, the parallel pipeline and the way they describe that, replenishment water and protective water levels. You know, they've got us waging battle with them over assumptions at the water master. And then there's some mysterious thing that's come up recently on water rights on the river. And so, you know, it's a multi-front war. And so if we can better define the major theme of what we're trying to accomplish, then it will be easier to hire a firm and give them one mission. And I don't think we're quite there yet on that. For all the other stuff, we need outreach help. You know, we need the collateral or the brochures and things reprinted. We need our, you know, tabletop tents on water consumption. You know, there's a bunch of other stuff that we need a body or a firm to pursue. But I think they're a little bit different. And I think Director Malick's concerns are about the bigger thematic picture, not the day-to-day. And so I guess there's some question in my mind, can we get both in one firm, or do ultimately we need an in-house person like Monterey One has, who can then work with an outside firm on one campaign? So we'll go back to the drawing board again and do some thinking. I would like to maybe springboard to the item 4, just so you understand how parched the earth is around here in trying to find local help that has the capabilities. You want to do that and jump just because it relates somewhat?
No, please, I'd like to move this conversation along anyway. So Amy, go ahead.
Just one question about what you just said, Dave. So the things like the, you know, the boards, the table boards and all the local stuff, isn't that's looking pretty good in the paper and so forth. And what Stephanie tells us about, is that becoming a problem to cover?
Well, you know, Stephanie's spending time right now designing a postcard to go to hospitality folks, and also as an item that we can leave behind if we make a personal visit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just on the stage 2 water conservation expectations. It's the perfect thing that should have been handed off to our
Oh, yeah.
person.
And
And
they have a local person for it.
well, and also, you know, you heard Maureen talking about, you know, she's not the artist. Well, you know, no offense, Stephanie, neither is Stephanie. She's produced ads based on old PDFs where she's pulled them out and, you know, become an instant artist. Mostly because, you know, old artwork withstands the test of time because people forget. So we can, you know, we can run it again at least every once in a while. But,
Okay.
you know, her job was to manage our outside person, not to internalize it.
Thank you.
And just to kind of close a loop here on Amy, you and Safwat, if you guys want to put some kind of list together, I'd be willing to call a special meeting. I think we're only meeting every 3 months as an outreach committee. Maybe we should meet sooner than that, just to kind of put a higher priority on this subject. And that means next month or the month after, but at least not wait 3 months before we discuss again.
Is it 3 months or 2 months? I thought we were alternating with a water supply.
Oh, maybe we are.
No, that's water demand. I think public outreach is,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So, but I think it's, anyway, well, say what you mean as your goal for that, George.
No, I mean, if you and Safwat, I mean, I thought you two were talking about putting together a list of what, I don't know, the objectives might be, or the priorities, or something or other about how you might see a consultant, outside consultant, addressing certain items. I didn't know whether that was a serious.
Well, I think,
offer
yeah,
by you two.
Safwat said that, but I think that obviously here we're talking about 2 different layers. We're talking about the big layer,
Yeah, the theme.
our impression in the public, and then Dave's talking about how we take care of all these things locally, like the hotels and the conservation and all that stuff, which is not supposed to be Stephanie's job.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are two things we're talking about
can
here.
talk about it.
And that's okay, you know, and I think we're trying to just sort out what our priorities are and what seems to be the first steps. And I think the staff person may be the first step, but also move the other idea along about themes. I mean, I just raised, I mean, I warned Laredo earlier about be ready, but I'll
Can we
just
do
warn
it?
him again.
Can we do it, three of us?
No, I just wanted to say, what can we say about some of our lawsuits? What can we tell the public about some things? Most of it's in kind of public, and we rely on the press to tell our story, or at least tell a story. And maybe we ought to be telling a little bit more of our story and why we're taking the position we are. Anyway, I just kind of throw
Yeah.
that out there.
I think we need another meeting for that, because if we three of us can't get together and talk about it.
But that's the current events issue, and that's where SAFWAT feels like we're being hammered too often. And I think
Well-
properly described by SAFWAT. Well, okay, Dave, why don't we move to the
Yeah.
other topic and
Yeah, and in between, I'll give you a little anecdote unrelated to almost everything. So Chevron, Ken Durr and his wife Donna own a place down here. I think he retired to here. And he's one of the big benefactors of that Pebble Beach ideas, authors and
Yeah.
ideas
Authors and ideas.
festival. Always writing a big check of support for that. But Chevron just announced over the weekend that they're moving their headquarters from San Ramon to Houston, Texas.
wow.
So yeah, and that they already had moved it from downtown San Francisco out to San Ramon a number of years ago. So they're not being the best corporate friend, you know, to at least the Bay Area.
A new CEO, and they're taking my granddaughter with them. Chaff my hide.
So turning our attention to item 4's exhibit, the staff note itself just kind of replayed our past practice, which is when we lost Rachel, our in-house PR person, or called her a public liaison, I guess, but we replaced her with TMC Communications, Thomas Brand Consulting, and then we hired TMD Creative. So those are two that we have utilized and are no longer available to us, nor would we go back to either of them. But that first list, you know, here are some household names. Armanasco. Well, Armanasco doesn't really do much public relations anymore. He's mostly lobbying. He's aligned himself with California strategies. And David spends half his time in Oregon at his retirement home. So they're not really a full service firm. Wendy Brickman at Brickman in Marketing could be a possibility. She's done quite a bit of work here locally. eLab Communications is one that we've never heard of before our recent search that looks interesting. Spoke Consulting is one that Director Anderson tipped us to, and they look like they might have some capabilities that are good and solid. And then Wellman Ad, you know, it's Phil Wellman. That's where, you know, he knows the water issues in and out. He knows public water now. He'd be great, but we'd have to really just kind of suck it up and do it and take the heat. You know, Mary Adams said, well, we can't hire him. You know, he's married to Melody Grislock, and, you know, we can't handle that heat. You know, I think that we could make the decision to just do it and survive it, you know, but that's one thing to think about. Firms that we had previously contacted that we didn't see a good fit, you see communication planners, they're dead anyway. Environmental relations is dead anyway. Lewis Leader, I know Lewis as a friend and colleague, and he's kind of past his prime. He's a one-man shop. He'll do political consulting. He's worked on a few campaigns recently. Not really appropriate. Moxie Marketing is really all food and ag based. They do a great job, but they're the ones who were not interested in us last time and sent us off to, the guy at the bottom, Terry Feinberg, with strategy market planning. And the takeaway with Terry was one-man shop located in Gilroy, not really knowledgeable of local issues. And then Peterson Communications in the middle is all high tech. He wouldn't know what to do with us. Does brand marketing for the tech sector. We did discover a few firms that, either A, if we had an internal person, but we needed to contract for design and, artwork services or photography, these two firms here might be of assistance to us locally. We've also previously through TVC Communications web sourced some artwork, and there's ways to do that. But again, that's not my job. That's not Stephanie's job. We can learn it, but the idea would be to have somebody, either our outside party, know how to shop all the design and artwork, or an inside position do it. So I think we're really in that mindset that we've exhausted the local players from the standpoint of really doing big things. They can do a lot of the little things, the email blasts, the social media posts, things like that. But to really take it to a level that Director Malik's proposed, which, the large thematic, almost campaign, I think it would take a bigger mindset to do it. And then I think we'll do a little more looking at this firm Rincon, because they have one principal. They've gone to a completely disaggregated no office model. So they've got one of their principals located here in Monterey, and he's the one I mentioned earlier, that's put together a campaign to make the energy industry in San Ardo look more like a farming, down home, farm and family kind of issue rather than an energy issue. But we'll do some looking at the larger firms. There's one or two out of San Francisco, but a lot of these firms get, they cut their teeth on political campaigns, and so a lot of them will have conflicts of interest. But we'll do some more looking, and we'll refer back to you.
Thanks for going over every one of those. I'm familiar with some of them. I would like, if the committee feels okay about this, I'd like to say the committee supports the general manager moving ahead with a staff person that has PR and outreach functions. It stops short of the thematic direction that we might be interested in. It doesn't mean it stops short exactly, but we got to take the first step, and this is the first step toward getting the talent that can take care of what we know exists as an outreach opportunities that we're kind of not as creative and maybe not as consistent as we could be. And then I'm willing to hold another committee meeting sooner than normally scheduled if we can get some thematic discussion. In order to have some thematic discussions.
Yep. Will do. You talk about just like the most basic of basics, right? If you ask me today, hey, what awards and grants has Pure Water Monterey gotten? I don't have a complete list. And that's the type of thing that, should be on one piece of paper, one PDF file on a computer, and you call your person, you say, hey, get me that list of all the grants and awards that project's won. Those are some of the nitty gritty details things, press clip library, all the citations of district news articles. Suffice to say, it went from paper to electronic to almost non-existent at this point. And so there are things that have been lost or dropped because of this turnover in our, going from in-house to outsourced to back, another outsource. So we've gotten the bigger things done. We keep getting our monthly branding ads done, which, keeps our image out in front. We still do our seminars and webinar advertising, which also keeps our image out front. But this is being held together by chewing gum and baling wire right now. So, and as Director Malik points out, we're completely incapable of taking anything to the next level right now. So I think it is a combination of the two. Is how do we cover all the very basic stuff, and then how do we coordinate with somebody who can run a bigger thematic campaign, which we have to figure out collectively how to define.
So I'm going to ask Safwat and Amy, are you willing to meet sooner than 3 months from now in order to have more discussion?
Yes.
I'm not a member of this committee.
Okay. Well, okay, we'll check that out. I'll inquire the committee to see, and maybe we can have a little more of a focused agenda item on the bigger picture. I mean, I don't know how you focus the bigger picture, but we can at least explore some language around it.
I'll be in touch with Amy and also with David Stolk to consult with his expertise. But initially, Amy and I should meet and figure out, put like a mission statement or a list of what we're looking for. And we'll take it from, we present it to David Stolk, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, and I'll do a little follow-up
Yeah.
myself.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, Dave, did we kind of, go ahead, sorry, Amy. Who was that?
That was me sighing. Never mind. Tired.
Anyway, I think we covered a lot of subjects today and a lot of kind of content with some differences of opinion. I'm really thrilled when that happens, because it just shows there's more issue there than just, everybody agreeing. I just love it. So thank you, Amy. Thank you, Safwat, for doing that. Thank you, Maureen, for starting us off with just kind of getting our brains on this subject. Anyway, Dave, I'll probably be in touch with you as well.
Yep.
Okay, is there anything more items to be placed on a future agenda? I think we've got one. Then we'll see about when we might meet.
All right.
Nothing else to go? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Okay, good night, everybody. Bye-bye.